Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Exciting program for you this week. Hope you enjoyed last week, and this week we have another great episode for you today. And today I just want to come and just talk to you from the subject, don't allow experiences of trauma to start your growth. I believe trauma is a universal language. And why do I say that? I say that because trauma is something that all of us can relate to. Trauma is something that we all have experienced in our lives. And if you haven't experienced it yet, my friend, just keep living, because I believe that every human being will experience trauma, whether that's small or great. But it's how you respond to that trauma, and also not giving that trauma dominion, power over your life. Because I feel like it's very important that we get to the place in our life where we don't allow our trauma not only to define us, but to outgrow us, in the sense that we feel powerless and we don't want to move on in life, all because our trauma has kept us stagnated. So if that is for you, I really believe that today's message is really going to encourage you, and I really appreciate you so much for watching. Let's dive right into today's show. We all have experienced trauma, whether that's small or great. And I believe that we all can say that trauma overall is an unpleasant experience. I don't believe any of us are going around saying, oh, I love being traumatized. You don't do that, right? I know I don't do that. It's just not normal. We are talking about everything from childhood trauma, psychological trauma, emotional trauma, whatever it is. We can all agree that we have had our share of trauma. And many of us, and even those that are watching right now, you may be dealing with trauma in your lives right now. Many people have even convinced themselves that our trauma has gotten the best of us, that trauma has become somehow victorious, or trauma has won in our lives. We see nothing good. We see nothing progressing in our lives. We don't see any type of significant change in our lives. And if you believe that way, if you've convinced yourself of that, my friend, I'm here to tell you that that is so far from the truth. Is it even possible? And I asked myself when I was writing this show out the other night, is it even possible to rise above the trauma that I've experienced? Is it even possible? No matter what that is, it could be, like I said, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, whatever trauma you've experienced in your life, is it even possible to rise above that? That's a great question. And it's a question I've often found myself faced with since I've been on this planet Earth. When I'm faced with opposition, when I'm faced with trauma, sometimes I ask myself, is it even possible to become victorious over this, or do I allow my trauma to become victorious over me? Is it possible to still move forward in life, or do I have to get permission, per se, from my trauma before I can do so? Yes, trauma is real, and I'm not here minimizing your trauma. You've been through what you've been through, and I sympathize with you. We've all been there. It really did happen. No one here is not saying that it didn't. And as many of you know, the healing process starts by acknowledging it. That is a very important thing when it comes to trauma. You have to acknowledge it. You can't deny it. Oh, it didn't happen. It'd be nice to pretend that it didn't, but you know what happened to you happened. So we acknowledge it. That's where the healing process starts. It's one thing to acknowledge it, but it's another thing to allow the trauma to govern and ultimately control your life. So we're not just focusing on acknowledging your trauma, but the focus of today's message is not allowing trauma to stop your progress in life, stop you from moving forward into the next phase of your life. And how many of you are watching right now? You are literally afraid. I get it. I've been there. I'm currently going through that. We all have been there. We're afraid to go into the next, whatever that is, all because our trauma has that wall up right there. Trauma is right here. You're right here. And whatever else you want to achieve and do is over here, but you can't get over there because trauma's in the way. Well, it's time to knock that trauma down. It's time to move forward. That doesn't mean you don't acknowledge it. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means I refuse to allow that wall of trauma to stop me from achieving my goals, going into the next phase of my life, or whatever that may be, or succeeding. You cannot give your trauma that much power over your lives. Some may say, well, how have I allowed my trauma to stop me? Henry, I love your message, but I'm just not getting it. How have I done that? Well, when you are afraid to go into the next phase of your life, and this is your answer. When you are afraid to go into the next phase of your life, then you give trauma power over you. Many of you watching right now, I'm afraid to go into the next friendship. I'm afraid to trust again. I'm afraid to establish a new relationship. I'm afraid to get married again. I'm afraid to do X, Y, and Z. Why? Because we have allowed trauma or our past trauma to stop us from doing that. Overall, I'm afraid to even move. I become literally stagnated. I'm afraid to move because I have been traumatized. And how many times we've said that? I'm afraid to go into the next, whatever that is for you, because I've been traumatized. Well, we acknowledge that. It happened. I get it. I know what it's like to be fearful and afraid to go into another relationship or another phase in your life, all because you've been traumatized or you've been hurt. I get it. And if you need to take time before you go into the next phase of whatever that may be, feel free to do so. I am not by any means saying rush into whatever the next phase of your life may be. But what I am trying to make clear to you today is don't give your trauma that much power over your life. You can rise above it. It is so easy to use our trauma as a crutch. And I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about something that I've said and I've experienced in not moving forward. And if that's truly our mentality, will I ever be ready to move forward? How many of you understand what I'm saying today? If I use my trauma as a crutch or as a platform to stop me from moving forward in life, will I ever be ready for a relationship? Come on, let's just be real. Will I ever be ready to be married again? Will I ever be ready to trust again? Will I ever be ready to do whatever again? You will never really be ready if you're going to use your trauma as a crutch to stop you from succeeding or going into the next phase of your life. You'll never be ready if that's your mentality. Well, I'm not fully healed. How many times you heard people say that? I'm not fully healed. And is that really a good reason not to move forward? That you're not fully healed? Because let me tell you something. Even though trauma comes in different ways, some experience small, some of it may be intense. We all going to experience trauma in our life, but can you truly ask yourself this? After you get healed of whatever it is that you're being traumatized, but I guarantee you beneath the surface, there's other stuff you need to work on. If you're watching right now, I'm afraid to go into the next relationship because I've been traumatized. Okay, I get that. And you don't have to go into another relationship. You don't have to do whatever you don't want to do. You are an adult. But at the same time, you can also use that, I wouldn't say as an excuse, but you can use that as a crutch to stop you from going into a potential relationship that could be good for you. Maybe you both have been traumatized. Maybe you both can work through this together. That's why we're here on this earth. That's why we're in this life, to help each other. The question, once again, is will I ever be ready to move forward? If I have given my trauma that much attention in my life, I believe today you should give yourself credit for your healing. Healing is never instant. I'm sorry, healing is not like going to the microwave and popping some popcorn. Ta-da, bam, there you go. Healing ain't that way. Healing is always progressive. So if you're waiting to be fully healed, whatever that looks like, you need to understand and ask yourself, what does that even look like? I've heard people say, I'm waiting to be fully healed from whatever trauma they've been through. And some people literally go to their graves still traumatized, still not fully healed. I don't think we ever are fully healed from anything. I really don't. I believe we're better off. We may be at point A at one time, but now you're at point C. Give yourself credit. I believe it comes down to a choice. And maybe it's a choice that you need to ask yourself today. Do I allow my trauma to stop me from growing, or do I move forward? What would be your decision today? What would be your choice today? Do I allow my trauma to stop me, or do I move forward? I refuse to allow my trauma to stop me from growing and evolving. Trauma can be overwhelming, but it can also eventually lead to intense personal growth. And at the end of the day, is that what we all want? We want that intense personal growth. We should all be growing in some capacity in our lives. Learn to be the best version of yourself. You are capable, no matter what anybody has told you, you are capable of greatness and moving forward. Trust the path. Liberate yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Growth only happens, watch this, at your consent, no one else. So what would be your decision today? Will you choose to not move forward in your life, or because you've been traumatized, or will you really give that trauma that much power over you? And I'm here today to tell you, don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure you subscribe to our channel here if you've enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you for watching, and we will see you next week.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. We want to connect with you. Visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You Show, or visit us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Henry Harris 100. We're so grateful you tuned in today and hope you have a fantastic day.